Have you ever wondered why a man can feel an inexplicable certainty about one woman, while hesitating endlessly with another? Most people believe it is about beauty, charm, or timing. But the truth is far more unsettling. What grips a man's unconscious is not surface attraction, but the silent signal of archetypal recognition. What you think pushes him away, your depth, your shadows, your contradictions, may actually be the very thing that makes him commit without hesitation. Carl Jung believed that the psyche responds to patterns older than memory itself, and within this truth lies the hidden key to devotion. The signal is not spoken in words but carried in energy, in the subtle architecture of presence. It is a woman who does not flinch from her own depths, who has faced the storm of her contradictions and stands unbroken. Men unconsciously feel when a woman has descended into her own underworld and returned with gold. They sense it in the way she is not rattled by silence, the way she does not seek constant reassurance, the way her gaze holds both softness and unshakable knowing. He cannot fully name it, but he feels it as inevitability. This woman does not need him, and precisely because she does not, he is drawn to give himself more fully. The paradox is ancient. The feminine that embraces her darkness does not repel but attracts. Jung called it integration of the shadow, the act of confronting the parts of the self society tells you to hide. A woman who owns her anger, her envy, her longing, her desire for power, yet transmutes them into wisdom, emits a magnetism that pierces the male unconscious. For the masculine psyche, she becomes an answer to his own incompleteness. He may believe he is choosing her, but in reality he is responding to an archetype his soul has been waiting to encounter. Imagine a woman walking into a room, not louder than others, not dressed more extravagantly, but carrying herself as though every choice is hers to make. She listens without the desperation to be liked. She speaks without fear of rejection. When conflict arises, she does not collapse into apology, but neither does she erupt into uncontrolled rage. Instead, she embodies the stillness of someone who has wrestled with her own demons and therefore cannot be easily shaken by another's. The man before her may not understand why his chest tightens, why his mind quiets, why the endless search for alternatives suddenly feels foolish. What he perceives in her is a woman aligned with her inner archetype, the queen, sovereign over her own kingdom of emotions. For many women, this truth is difficult to grasp because they have been taught to confuse self-erasure with love. To please, to adjust, to soften every edge. Yet in doing so, they unknowingly rob a man of the very experience that makes commitment inevitable, the recognition of her as a whole being, not a fragment. The male unconscious does not seek a servant but a mirror, not a hollow vessel but a chalice brimming with her own essence. When a woman hides her true self to keep him, he feels only the void of her absence. But when she dares to be fully herself, even at the risk of loss, he feels the gravity of her presence, and it compels him closer. This is not about manipulation, not about tactics or performance. It is about a deeper law: the psyche responds to wholeness. Jung wrote that individuation is the process of becoming complete, not perfect. The woman who embraces her own inner paradox, both nurturing and fierce, tender and untouchable, embodies the living symbol of wholeness. To the male psyche, this is irresistible, not because she offers comfort, but because she awakens something eternal. He does not see merely a partner, he senses destiny. And so the secret signal is not spoken aloud, not written in gestures or games. It is a vibration, a resonance of being. The unconscious dance begins long before words are exchanged, long before logic arrives to explain what is happening. Archetypes communicate through presence, through unspoken signals that bypass reason. When a woman is whole, when she has embraced her own contradictions and refuses to fracture herself for approval, she carries the invisible seal of authenticity. Men may not understand it consciously, but at the level of instinct and psyche, they feel it as safety and inevitability. This is the essence of commitment, not the rational checklist of compatibility, but the instinctual recognition that she represents something ancient, something beyond the reach of masks and performance. Carl Jung believed that within each man lies an inner image of the feminine, what he called the anima. This inner feminine is not simply fantasy or preference, it is the very counterpart of his soul, the balancing energy that completes him. When a woman embodies wholeness, when she is not split between who she is and who she pretends to be, she resonates with that inner image. It is as though she awakens his anima from slumber, and he is compelled toward her, not by choice alone but by unconscious necessity. He does not simply want her, he feels bound to her, as if some silent thread has always existed between them. Yet here lies the paradox, the more a woman tries to become that image, the more she loses it. The anima is not awakened by imitation or effort, but by authenticity. If she suppresses her anger to appear gentle, he senses the falseness. If she denies her longing to seem independent, he feels the emptiness. The masculine psyche recognizes authenticity like the body recognizes oxygen, it is undeniable, life-giving, non-negotiable. When it is present, he cannot look away, when it is absent, he drifts. Consider how many relationships falter because the woman believes she must constantly prove her worth. She gives, she bends, she sacrifices pieces of herself, believing that more effort equals more devotion. But the deeper truth is cruelly ironic, the more she erases herself, the more invisible she becomes to him. He may enjoy the comfort, but he will not commit from the core of his being. For commitment is not born from convenience, it is born from awe. And awe cannot be manufactured. It emerges only when a man encounters the mystery of a woman who refuses to betray herself. This is why the shadow is crucial. Jung taught that the shadow is everything we hide from the world and even from ourselves, our jealousy, our rage, our sensual hunger, our lust for recognition. Most women fear that if these qualities are revealed, they will be abandoned. But when these forces are integrated, owned, named, and held with dignity, they transform into power. A woman who has embraced her shadow no longer clings. She no longer needs to manipulate or plead. She becomes a force of nature, unpredictable yet grounded, magnetic yet sovereign. And to the man who encounters her, she represents not chaos but completion. His unconscious senses that she has faced what he has not yet faced in himself, and this ignites both attraction and reverence. Imagine standing before a storm, the sky cracking open with lightning, the air vibrating with electricity. One does not negotiate with such a force, nor try to control it. One simply stands in awe, humbled, awakened to the power of nature itself. This is what a man feels when confronted with the woman who has integrated her shadow. She is no longer merely desirable, she is undeniable. And his instinct, ancient and unspoken, tells him that to walk away from such a force would be to betray his own destiny. The signal that makes him commit is not a smile, not a strategy, not even beauty. It is the presence of wholeness. A woman who has faced herself becomes a mirror of his own unintegrated depths. He cannot escape the pull because it is not merely her he is drawn to, it is the possibility of becoming whole through her reflection. The moment of recognition is rarely loud. It does not arrive with fireworks or declarations but with a quiet inevitability, the sense that something larger than choice has entered the room. To the outside world, it may appear as though a man simply decided to stay, to commit, to bind himself to a woman. But at the level of psyche, what has taken place is closer to myth, an archetypal bond has been activated, and he finds himself unable to retreat without feeling that he is abandoning his own destiny. The woman who evokes this response does not do so by demanding or by chasing. She emanates it by standing in her own wholeness. There is no frantic energy of persuasion in her presence, no desperate attempt to prove value. Instead, there is calm gravity, the quiet assurance of someone who knows she is enough. This calm is not fragile but forged, it was born through her own initiation into suffering, rejection, and rebirth. And men feel this history of inner battles not as baggage but as depth. The man who encounters her senses that she is not clinging to him for rescue, because she has already rescued herself. That realization ignites his respect, and respect is the true seed of lasting devotion. Carl Jung often spoke of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming one's true self. In the dynamic of love, individuation manifests as the courage to be fully oneself within the presence of another. The feminine that has individuated refuses to shrink, yet also refuses to dominate. She exists as an equal force, neither above nor beneath the masculine, but alongside. In this balance, the masculine psyche feels safe to lower its defenses, to step beyond hesitation. Commitment emerges not from fear of loss but from trust in her authenticity. He knows that with her, life will not descend into trivial masks, with her, the soul will be met. It is important to understand that this is not about perfection. Wholeness does not mean flawless behavior or eternal calm. It means a willingness to own imperfection without collapsing under its weight. A woman who can say, "Yes, I feel envy," or "Yes, I feel fear," and still remain steady in her essence, radiates a paradoxical strength. She is vulnerable without being weak, transparent without being dependent. And the man before her feels compelled not because she hides her humanity, but because she embodies it so completely. There is, however, a danger in misunderstanding this truth. Some women attempt to wield shadow integration as a performance, flaunting intensity or chaos as though it were proof of depth. But performance always betrays itself. The masculine unconscious knows the difference between true integration and staged rebellion. Real integration is quiet, subtle, and powerful. It does not scream, it hums. It does not demand attention, it commands it. A woman in her wholeness does not seek to overwhelm, she simply cannot be overlooked. When a man senses this resonance, his hesitation dissolves because he no longer feels he is choosing between women, between options, between futures. He feels instead that he has stepped into alignment with something already written. His rational mind may list reasons, but beneath them all lies a single truth: she represents the union of opposites he has been unconsciously seeking. In her, he sees not just a partner but a mirror of his own unfinished journey. The more complete she is within herself, the more inevitable his devotion becomes. And here is the paradox that terrifies yet liberates: the woman who most easily inspires commitment is the one who does not require it to validate her worth. Because she does not chase, he cannot flee. Because she does not beg, he cannot dismiss. Because she does not fracture, he cannot deny the gravity of her wholeness. What was once hesitation becomes surrender, not to her demands, but to the undeniable pull of the archetype she embodies. The silent signal is woven not in what she does for him but in who she is when no one is watching. The feminine that compels commitment carries an aura of inevitability, as if life itself bends subtly in her direction. She does not rush to secure promises, nor does she waste energy dissecting every sign of affection or withdrawal. Instead, she dwells in a posture of sovereignty, her worth so rooted that his approval cannot alter it. And this steadiness communicates more than any words: she is not a passing chapter, she is a destiny. Men hesitate when they sense fragility in the bond, when the woman stands before them hungry for validation, fearing abandonment, bending her essence to secure attention. The masculine psyche reads this not as devotion but as incompleteness, and incompleteness awakens his doubt. But when a woman stands rooted in her wholeness, the hesitation dissipates because he no longer fears being consumed by her need. He realizes that being with her is not a cage but an expansion. She does not bind him, she liberates him into his own higher nature. Commitment then ceases to feel like a sacrifice and becomes a calling. Carl Jung wrote that the soul longs for union, but only the union of equals can endure. For the masculine, equality is not measured in status, wealth, or external power, it is sensed in the invisible realm of essence. When a man encounters a woman who has faced her shadows, he perceives her as an equal because she has mastered within what he struggles to master without. Her composure, her refusal to collapse into fear, her acceptance of complexity, these qualities awaken his respect. Respect, unlike infatuation, deepens with time. And from respect, commitment naturally flows. It is here that many women misinterpret the path. They believe that by silencing their needs, they demonstrate strength. But suppression is not sovereignty. The woman who denies her longing, who buries her hunger for intimacy under a mask of detachment, does not inspire commitment, she provokes distance. For what the masculine truly commits to is not emptiness but fullness. It is the woman who admits desire without desperation, who expresses need without collapsing into dependency, who becomes irresistible. She demonstrates that her emotional world is vast yet navigable, complex yet integrated. This balance mirrors the ancient archetypes. In mythology, the goddess was not adored because she was harmless but because she embodied the full spectrum of life, fertility and wrath, tenderness and ferocity, creation and destruction. To the masculine psyche, such a figure is not threatening but enthralling. He recognizes that in surrendering to her presence, he does not lose himself but finds the missing half of his own unconscious. The man does not commit because she asks, he commits because without her, he feels incomplete. Imagine his inner world as a fractured mirror. Alone, he sees only pieces, distorted reflections that never align. But in her, the mirror becomes whole. Her presence does not erase his fragmentation, it illuminates it, challenges it, calls it to order. The masculine unconscious craves this union not out of weakness but out of necessity. For without the reflection of the integrated feminine, his journey remains unfinished. In her wholeness, he glimpses the possibility of his own. This is why the secret signal is never loud or visible. It cannot be taught through tactics or borrowed through imitation. It emerges only when a woman ceases to negotiate her own worth. The paradox deepens, the moment she no longer strives to prove she is enough is the moment she becomes more than enough. And in that silence, in that unwavering certainty, he feels the ancient pull, the call to commit, not out of fear of losing her, but out of reverence for what he has found. The masculine psyche is haunted by hesitation not because it cannot feel attraction, but because it fears illusion. A man may linger in half-commitments, circling the orbit of a woman without stepping into her gravity, when some part of him suspects she is presenting a mask. He waits, sometimes unconsciously, to see if the performance will fracture, if the sweetness will sour, if the devotion will crumble into demand. Hesitation is his defense against the pain of betrayal. Yet when he meets the woman who has stripped herself of masks, who can stand before him whole, hesitation loses its ground. There is nothing left for him to test, no illusion left to shatter. What he sees is what he receives, and this transparency disarms the walls he once relied upon. Carl Jung understood that relationship is not merely about love but about psychic alchemy. The meeting of man and woman is not just two lives entangled, but two unconscious realms colliding. The woman who has walked through her own shadows embodies a vessel capable of holding that alchemy. She does not panic when his wounds surface, does not flee when his silence becomes heavy, does not collapse when his defenses rise. Instead, she mirrors back steadiness, not by fixing him but by embodying her own integration. And in that mirror, he perceives not judgment but possibility, the possibility that he too can move beyond fragmentation into wholeness. This is why he begins to commit not only with his presence but with his soul. The surface gestures of love, gifts, promises, fleeting passion, are replaced by something deeper, the willingness to entwine his destiny with hers. A man may desire many women, but he commits to the one who represents a path into his own evolution. When he feels that her presence accelerates his journey toward becoming, when he senses that in union with her he is more fully himself, then hesitation dissolves. Commitment is no longer a decision, it is inevitability. The signal that awakens this inevitability is subtle, but it can be felt in the smallest details. In the way she does not rush to fill silences, but allows them to breathe. In the way she listens without the compulsion to control his reaction. In the way her boundaries are neither brittle walls nor open wounds, but living membranes that honor both herself and him. These gestures are not strategies but the organic expressions of a woman who has ceased to betray herself. The masculine feels this not as distance but as depth, and the weight of that depth quiets his restless search. Yet this power cannot be faked. If a woman tries to weaponize detachment, if she performs indifference to coerce commitment, she radiates contradiction. The masculine unconscious senses the hunger beneath the mask, and hesitation returns with double force. The true signal is born only when she no longer fears losing him, when she realizes that her worth is unshaken regardless of his choice. It is this inner detachment, paradoxically, that binds him most strongly. For when she no longer clings, he no longer pulls away. When she ceases to chase, he turns toward her. This is the mystery of polarity, the feminine that is rooted calls forth the masculine that is decisive. The still water draws the river to carve its course. The unshaken mountain invites the wanderer to build at its base. In her presence, he feels not pressured but chosen by something larger than his will. And that sensation, of being claimed not by demand but by destiny, is what makes him step across the threshold from hesitation into devotion. Commitment, then, is not about convincing him, nor is it about timing or circumstance. It is about resonance. When her wholeness vibrates at the frequency of his unspoken longing, his choice is already made. His mind may catch up later, but his soul has already surrendered. There comes a moment when the dance between masculine hesitation and feminine sovereignty shifts into something irreversible. The man who once stood at a distance, calculating, weighing, guarding his freedom, suddenly feels that freedom deepen rather than shrink in her presence. It is not that she has trapped him, nor that she has demanded his surrender. Instead, her very being reveals a paradox he cannot ignore. She does not need him, yet she welcomes him. She could walk alone, yet she allows him to walk beside her. In that paradox, his resistance collapses, for what he feared losing, his autonomy, is preserved, and what he secretly longed for, his union, is fulfilled. Carl Jung described the marriage of opposites as the ultimate act of individuation. The psyche does not evolve in isolation, it evolves through the mirror of the other. The man who commits without hesitation is not simply choosing a partner, he is choosing the mirror in which he can finally see himself whole. The woman who has integrated her shadow, who has claimed her desires without shame and her boundaries without apology, becomes this mirror. Her wholeness reflects his incompleteness, not to humiliate him but to invite him into growth. And the masculine, when confronted with an opportunity for growth that does not threaten annihilation, moves toward it with certainty. In this way, commitment ceases to be about romance alone, it becomes initiation. For the man, Entering her orbit is akin to stepping into fire, not to be destroyed but to be refined. He knows, consciously or not, that she will not allow him to remain stagnant. Her very presence will call out the fragments he has buried, his fears of inadequacy, his suppressed tenderness, his avoided wounds. To the man who longs for expansion, this is terrifying yet irresistible. And so he commits, not because she demands permanence, but because without her, he senses he would remain unfinished. This is why the signal that makes him commit cannot be manufactured by external tactics. It is not found in carefully crafted texts, in rehearsed allure, or in timed withdrawal. These strategies may capture his attention, but they will never claim his devotion. Devotion is claimed only by authenticity, by the resonance of a soul that has ceased to negotiate its worth. When she no longer bends to hold him, when she no longer fears the silence, when she no longer performs to be chosen, she transmits the only signal the unconscious cannot resist: inevitability. To the outside eye, this inevitability often looks like magic. Friends may whisper that she must have done something to make him fall so quickly, so completely. But the truth is simpler and more profound: she did nothing but become herself. She became the woman who could walk away without bitterness, who could stay without fear, who could love without losing herself. And in that equilibrium, he found the reflection of what he had always been searching for, even when he did not know it. The masculine heart commits most deeply when it recognizes that the woman before it is not a mask but a mystery. Masks can be worn by anyone, mysteries cannot be duplicated. Masks fade with time, mysteries deepen. And so he anchors himself not because he has conquered her, but because he knows he never fully will. Her depths will always reveal more, her presence will always stretch him further, her wholeness will always awaken the parts of him still asleep. This is the commitment born not of fear, not of convenience, but of reverence. And once reverence enters the bond, hesitation has no soil left to grow in. His devotion is no longer a decision he must revisit, it becomes the ground he stands on. For in her, he sees not only love, but truth. The truth of this devotion reveals itself most clearly in the way he begins to move differently around her. The hesitation that once haunted his steps, the weighing of options, the scanning of alternatives, the guarded caution, falls away, not with noise but with silence. His presence steadies. His eyes stop wandering. His energy no longer scatters outward but gathers inward, directed toward her. And though he may not fully articulate why, the reason is simple: he has encountered a woman who holds both her light and her shadow without fear. To the masculine psyche, this is not only rare, it is sacred. Jung believed that the sacred is always tied to wholeness. What is incomplete feels restless, untrustworthy, forever in search of something to fill the gaps. What is whole radiates stability, and stability is the foundation upon which the masculine feels safe to commit. Yet this stability does not mean stillness. It means movement without fracture, change without collapse. The woman who embodies this appears to him not as a fragile crystal that may shatter in his hands, but as a living flame, fierce yet steady, illuminating yet untamed. He feels not burdened by her presence but elevated, as if standing beside her makes him more than he was before. It is crucial to understand that this signal cannot be feigned. When a woman tries to imitate wholeness while still fractured within, the energy betrays her. She may speak words of independence, yet her body tenses with fear of abandonment. She may project strength, yet her silence drips with unspoken resentment. Men sense this discrepancy not with their minds but with their instincts, and hesitation re-emerges like a warning bell. The true signal is born not of words but of integration. A woman who has sat with her grief, who has named her rage, who has made peace with her longing, vibrates at a frequency the masculine cannot resist. It is not perfection that draws him, it is truth. Consider the difference between the woman who pleads, "Stay with me, I need you," and the woman whose presence alone whispers, "I am whole, and you may share in this wholeness if you choose." The first provokes obligation, the second provokes devotion. Obligation breeds resistance, devotion dissolves it. He does not feel trapped in her gravity, he feels chosen by it. And because she does not cling, he cannot run. Because she does not beg, he cannot dismiss. Because she does not fracture, he cannot forget. The archetypes echo through mythology to remind us of this dynamic. The sovereign queen does not chase the wandering knight. She waits within her castle, not in passivity but in certainty, and the knight who is ready recognizes her presence as destiny. The wild goddess does not beg mortals to worship her, they kneel unbidden, overwhelmed by her untamed force. The lover archetype does not seduce by calculation but by surrender to her own aliveness. Each figure embodies wholeness, and each evokes devotion without demand. The Jungian truth is that men do not commit because they are cornered, they commit because they are captivated. The signal that makes him commit without hesitation is not external beauty, not clever games, not endless giving. It is the invisible resonance of a woman who has come home to herself. In her, he feels both safety and challenge, softness and strength, acceptance and mystery. He does not step toward her merely because he wants her, he steps because to walk away would feel like betraying his own soul. And so the feminine that has integrated her shadow becomes irresistible not by trying harder but by being truer. She is the paradox that dissolves hesitation, independent yet inviting, soft yet unshakable, luminous yet shadowed. And in her, he finds not a fleeting romance but a fate he cannot deny. The psychology of commitment is not a puzzle to be solved by strategy but a resonance that arises when two souls encounter truth. For the masculine, hesitation is often a shield against the hollow, the disguised, the incomplete. He hesitates when he suspects that the mask will eventually slip, that the devotion he sees is not rooted in authenticity but in fear of abandonment. Yet when he meets the woman who has faced her shadows and transmuted them into light, his hesitation no longer has a purpose. It dissolves like mist before the sun, leaving only the clarity of inevitability. Carl Jung spoke often of the union of opposites, the sacred marriage within the psyche. For the man, the feminine becomes this union when she no longer hides from contradiction. She can be fierce without rejecting tenderness, nurturing without collapsing into servitude, free without abandoning intimacy. This balance of paradox awakens his anima, the inner feminine he has long sought in unconscious form. Suddenly, the restless search that once kept him wandering quiets, for he recognizes in her a living embodiment of his own inner image. He may not know the language of Jung, but his unconscious speaks it fluently, she is what he has always been moving toward. It is here that the transformation occurs. Desire shifts into reverence. Attraction deepens into awe. The man who once lingered at the threshold steps fully across, not because she pushed him but because his own soul pulled him forward. Commitment becomes less a decision and more a recognition, the realization that she embodies a wholeness he cannot walk away from without losing part of himself. His devotion is not a chain but a choice made again and again, flowing from the well of respect her wholeness inspires. Yet this devotion is not won through passivity. It emerges because she embodies sovereignty. Sovereignty is not cold detachment, nor is it hardened independence. It is the knowing that she governs herself. She does not barter her essence for attention, nor does she dilute her truth to avoid rejection. She may love deeply, but her love does not beg. She may desire union, but her union is not desperate. This steadiness, this refusal to betray her own soul, communicates to him that she is not here to be completed, she is here to share completion. And in that sharing, he feels the safest surrender of his life. This is the hidden Jungian signal, not submission, not seduction, but integration. A woman who is integrated radiates an energy that whispers to his unconscious, "Here, you will not be devoured. Here, you will not be deceived. Here, you will meet yourself." And so he stays, not out of obligation, but because he cannot imagine leaving. Think of it this way: men may chase novelty, but they commit to depth. Novelty fades, depth expands. The woman who embodies her full spectrum, her shadow, her light, her chaos, her calm, offers a depth that no fleeting desire can replace. She is not a temporary spark but a fire that endures, not a fleeting storm but a climate in which life can grow. And so, his hesitation transforms into devotion, not because she demanded it, but because in her presence, his soul recognized its own reflection. Commitment, in its truest form, is not a promise of possession but an act of reverence. And reverence can only be evoked by the woman who refuses to fragment herself for anyone. This truth may unsettle, for it means that the surest path to devotion is not pursuit but presence, not pleasing but becoming. She does not win him over, she awakens him. And in awakening, she becomes unforgettable. The alchemy of commitment unfolds most powerfully when the feminine ceases to measure her worth in the reflection of the masculine gaze. For as long as she chases validation, her energy leaks into the abyss of proving and persuading, and the masculine senses the fracture beneath her offering. But when she turns inward, when she claims her shadows, her longings, her hunger for both tenderness and freedom, something profound changes in her field. She begins to radiate not the plea of, "Choose me," but the truth of, "I choose myself." And that subtle shift awakens in him the most primal recognition: she is no longer an option, she is inevitability. Jung would call this individuation, the process by which the soul integrates its opposites and becomes whole. A woman who has individuated cannot be reduced to archetypal fragments. She is not only the nurturer, not only the temptress, not only the muse. She is all of these, interwoven, unapologetic, unashamed. The masculine, confronted with such completeness, feels the rare safety of entering a bond where masks are unnecessary. He knows instinctively that she will not dissolve into pretense nor collapse under the weight of his own projections. With her, he does not face illusion, he faces reality. And reality, when it is alive and embodied, is magnetic. This is why men commit without hesitation when they encounter a woman who has claimed her sovereignty. Her boundaries are not weapons, but invitations to meet her on solid ground. Her vulnerability is not a cry for rescue, but a demonstration of courage. Her independence is not rejection, but an affirmation that her love is given freely, not from need. These qualities stir the archetypes deep within him. She becomes, in his unconscious, both queen and beloved, both earth and flame. He is drawn not because she traps him, but because in her presence, he sees the path to becoming more than he is. Hesitation evaporates when a man realizes that his choice is not between her and another, but between truth and avoidance. To walk away from her is to walk away from his own evolution. To remain with her is to step into the fire that refines him. And though his ego may tremble, his soul surrenders, for it knows that commitment to her is commitment to his own becoming. This is why she must never dilute her essence to secure devotion. For the very fire she fears will drive him away is the fire that compels him to stay. Men do not flee from feminine power, they flee from feminine fracture. Power, when grounded in authenticity, is irresistible. It is not domination but radiance, not control but magnetism. When she stands in her wholeness, he senses not competition but completion. And in that sensation, hesitation becomes impossible. Consider how the unconscious communicates, not through logic, not through arguments, but through resonance. He does not list reasons in his heart, he feels inevitability in his bones. The woman before him is not simply attractive, she is archetypal. She evokes myths older than memory, patterns encoded in his psyche long before he met her face. She is the sovereign he yearned to serve, the mirror he yearned to face, the partner he yearned to walk beside. His commitment is not rational, it is ancestral. And once awakened, it cannot be undone. Thus, the secret Jungian signal is not found in pursuit, in games, or in sacrifice. It is found in the wholeness of a woman who has faced herself. The man who meets her does not commit because she begs him to, he commits because his unconscious declares that walking away would be betrayal. There comes a turning point in every story of love where the power dynamics dissolve, and what remains is truth. For the woman who has faced her shadow and claimed her sovereignty, this moment is not born of strategy but of inevitability. She has ceased to wonder whether she is enough, because she has realized that enoughness is not given by another, it is reclaimed from within. And when a man stands before such a woman, his hesitation falters. His soul whispers that leaving her would not be a choice but a wound, a fracture he would carry long after her absence. Jung's vision of the psyche reminds us that what draws two souls together is not mere attraction but recognition. The man sees in her the reflection of his anima, the inner feminine that has lived within him all along. She embodies the paradoxes he has never reconciled, the tenderness and the ferocity, the light and the darkness, the silence and the fire. He may not know why he feels it, but his unconscious tells him that in her, he meets not only a woman but the missing fragments of himself. And when a man meets himself through her presence, he cannot walk away without a sense of betrayal. This is why true commitment is not coaxed, manipulated, or demanded, it is awakened. The woman who embodies her own wholeness transmits a signal beyond words, a resonance that tells him, here, your destiny will unfold. And he, who has wandered through illusions and half-measures, feels the weight of inevitability. It is not that he loses his freedom, it is that his freedom finds its purpose. What, then, becomes of the woman? She is no longer a seeker of promises, no longer a captive of doubt. She does not build her house upon the shifting sands of his affection, because her foundation lies within. She is whole whether he stays or leaves, radiant whether he speaks or falls silent. His commitment may be precious, but it does not define her. And paradoxically, it is precisely this freedom that makes her devotion irresistible. For the masculine does not anchor to the woman who clings, he anchors to the woman who stands rooted in herself. The old myths echo here. The goddess is not chosen because she begs, she is chosen because she embodies inevitability. The queen is not crowned because she asks, she is crowned because her presence makes denial impossible. The lover is not unforgettable because of beauty alone, but because her soul transmits a vibration that no other can replicate. Archetypes do not compete, they reveal themselves. And when a woman reveals herself fully, without fear of rejection, she evokes commitment not as conquest but as destiny. And now, the closing truth, the most magnetic signal is not external, not tactical, not even visible. It is the silent power of self-possession. A woman who knows her worth does not move from scarcity, does not chase shadows, does not barter her essence. She chooses. She chooses when to open, when to walk away, when to love, when to release. Her life is not a performance but a declaration, I am whole. And to the man who is ready, this declaration is irresistible. The path ends here, in sovereignty, in freedom, in rebirth. The woman who embodies this truth no longer waits for him to decide, because her own decision has already been made, she will never again abandon herself. And it is from this ground that the masculine kneels, not out of submission but out of reverence. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.